Hey guys, so I thought I'd do a live to discuss the whole Brexit debate because, as you know, on the 11th, there's going to be this vote. Now, it seems from what everyone's saying that it's definitely going to be a rejection of Theresa May's deal. And so I thought we'd better look at the chart because, in my mind, it's obvious it could be closer than we all think. Because if you think about it, there are a lot of Labour MPs who are very pro Remain, but who are in Leave constituencies. So it could be a wonderful cop out for them to support Theresa May because then they can say to their constituents, well, I supported Brexit, when they're really supporting an agreement which is very much Remain. So you could see quite a few people from the Labour crossing over, even though will be encouraging them to reject it. Plus, there could be some knighthoods given. You know, a lot of these Tory politicians are in it for their careers, and it might do their careers good to vote with it. So it could be a little closer than we think. So that's for their careers, and it might do their careers good to vote with it. So it could be a little closer than we think. So that's why I thought it would be interesting to have a look. And I was really amazed because on that day, there are some exact transits hitting Theresa May's chart. Now, I'm not going to talk about her whole chart because we have discussed that before, but it was rather interesting that Saturn, which is around 8 degrees of Capricorn, is forming an exact square to her sun in Libra. It's within minutes. And now, a Saturn square is usually indicative of a defeat, of an obstacle, of opposition to your ideas. It indicates, a lot of discouragement, of challenges, of facing stiff opposition. And so just looking at that alone, that says to me, this is going to be voted down. It's a defeat for her. But it also says to me that there's some resolve within her that she's not just going to say, oh, well, I'm going to back down leadership. Let's have another leader. It seems to me that there's someone in the background giving her confidence. It's probably the business community, possibly, or so there is a sense that she feels emboldened through what she's doing, that someone at least is behind her, and that's why she's just hanging in there and not quitting, despite what we perceive on the outside as an awful lot of opposition. Sorry about those sounds coming on there. So I think that there's going to be a lot of opposition to these plans, and anything with the Saturn transit, anything that's invalid must fall away. Now, what she's also having is Neptune is directly on her Mars. Again, it's within minutes. Of course, we don't know her time of birth, but I'm now assuming she's Capricorn rising, and that is again within minutes. Now, sometimes Uranus on Mars could be a positive thing if you're in the theatre, if you're doing something like dance or drama where you interact with the public on an emotional level, and it can sometimes work on the public where you are appealing directly to the public. But the mistake here that I think she's making, even with this debate with Jeremy Corbyn, is this isn't about appealing to the public. This is about appealing to her peers, to the rest of the legislative, to the rest of the Commons, and that is where she's making a mistake. So I think she's going to fall down, and she doesn't exactly have their support. So I'm pretty sure this vote is going to go against her. Now, because Neptune is on Mars, there's a lot of deception going on here. And I think we've all discovered, and it does show up in Theresa May's chart, that she's a person who doesn't approach things head on. She is very deceptive and quite duplicitous. Because look at how many she tends to say whatever the person wants to hear. Like when she was talking to the CBI, she was saying to them quite different things to what she says to us. And I think she's being totally disingenuous when she says that now we're going to be able to control our borders through this deal she's got, because she's also on the 11th of December going to sign the UN Migration Pact, which is going to make migration a human right. It'll be probably hate speech to even criticize it, and it'll make migration a lot easier. So I don't really think that there's going to be a stop to migration at all. Now, we know not all Brexiteers are worried about migration, but a lot are. And that's one area where she's definitely not being genuine. And I also think that there's a big problem here. She's talking about this being a deal, and Donald Trump says, oh, well, but this is great for the EU, but it's not going to allow the UK to make trade deals, which is exactly right. Then she sort of comes along and says, yes, but it's a transition deal, and there'll be another negotiation period. And at the end of that, we'll be able to make our trade deals. There'll be no problem with a backstop. However, I don't hear the EU echoing that. They're talking about this is the deal. This is the final deal. They don't seem to be echoing this talk that there's going to be another phase to this deal, after which we suddenly going to magically emerge with being able to trade with other countries and sort of being able to trade with the EU. Now, look, in 2 years, they haven't managed to achieve anything. Suddenly, in another 2 years, are they going to achieve what seems to be the impossible? Seems to me they're going to make this whole Stormont agreement, the the linchpin, so that with Stormont, you can't have a hard border, so therefore you cannot get out of the whole common market thing because of the hard border problem. The only other option is for the UK to an island, which does seem to be something that the EU are pushing for. So what's going to happen if this is voted down? Well, apparently there's a period where Theresa May could try and have another vote where she almost says, okay, I'll go back and negotiate a bit more. She comes back with some minor concession and tries to have another vote. I'm not sure that will happen. I do think this is the end of her now. In the UK chart, which you can see here, you see there, Moon is at 19 degrees of Cancer, and right now Pluto is down here at 19 degrees of Capricorn. Now it's been moving back and forth, opposing the Moon. It opposes the Moon for the last time this month, right? This is her last chance. This is the last throw of the dice. I really think she's gone after that. However, in terms of the leadership of the country, you see Jupiter in the 10th house there, and Uranus is going to be coming to square Jupiter from Taurus. And that's going to be happening throughout this year. So that's why I say that I think Theresa May, even if she gets taken over by another leader, there will be more leadership challenges. Now, as I talked about Amber Rudd, I think she's come back just in time to have a go at it. I think she'd like to be leader. I think she's thoroughly inappropriate, as she's one of the most pro-Remain MPs out there, and she's sitting on a wafer-thin majority in Hastings, so that's not ideal. I think it could be someone, probably ideally Michael Gove, because he's one of the few people that may just be able to squeeze something else out of the negotiation. And then throughout next year, there'll be a couple more leadership challenges. Will there be a general election? Well, I don't think so from the chart, because there's nothing that powerful coming along. And you must remember that because of the Fixed Term Parliament Act that David Cameron brought in, there now cannot be an election unless 2/3 of Parliament vote for it. There's no way Tory MPs are going to vote for that. And there are a lot of Labour MPs that also won't vote for that because they're not that keen to see a Corbyn government. I did hear Peter Lilly on LBC talking about another option where if there's a no confidence vote in the government, that gives Corbyn a window of opportunity where he could challenge by forming his own government and go to the Queen and say, I've formed a government where he can take over. But I really don't think the DUP would allow that to happen. I don't see a clear majority. Maybe even some of his own party, as I said, wouldn't want that to happen. I think the most probable thing looking forward here is a no deal, because the EU have made it clear that this is it. This is the deal, or it's no deal. Now, with the solar eclipse happening in Capricorn at the beginning of the next year on the 5th, it'll be happening in the 4th house of the United Kingdom chart. This indicates endings, no looking back, break with the past. So I think we are moving into something. We're definitely moving into something different. And with all the action of Pluto, Pluto seems to have done its work. It's finished. I don't see that we're going to go backwards in terms of a referendum. Even if we did have a referendum, it probably would go leave. And I don't see that they'll be able to cancel the whole thing. Even in terms of an extension, I'd say that's less likely. But I don't think this is going to pass through the House. Pretty certain. And Theresa May's situation will become untenable, and it's highly likely we'll have a new leader of the Tory party before Christmas. So that's a look at the UK chart. I just wanted to add a few things in here that I thought was interesting. Yeah. Well, you must remember from the EU's chart, they've got loads of planets. It's a stellium in Scorpio. They've got Moon in Taurus. They've got Leo rising. This is an incredibly stubborn block. It's very hard to deal with them. Virtually the only thing you can do is walk away because they are not going to give an inch. Plus the fact they have to shore it up because it's all shaky with the Visegrad countries are causing them a lot of trouble by kicking up their heels and not playing ball. I heard someone saying this that a lot of people just want this to be out the way. So therefore, let's have Teresa's deal and let's stop talking about it. I think that's a kind of crazy notion. I mean, what if in 1943 we all said, we're really bored of this whole World War thing. Let's just let Hitler have his own way and we'll go back to playing football. I mean, it's a crazy notion. We're going through a momentous time. We can't just quit half time and say, well, we've had enough of this and walk away. I think that's extremely childish. And I think that's really quite insulting to the voter, both Leave and Remain. I think everyone wants to see this through towards some form of hopefully successful a conclusion right now. I mean, we don't just want it over with. I think it's basically a poison chalice for anyone who takes over now. they won't last long because they're going to have to take some very tough decisions. But hopefully we get someone a little bit stronger who can do that, then pave the way for a new leader who I think it's going to be Boris. And I'm not saying that because I'm a massive Boris fan. I'm saying that because I looked at the chart and that's what spoke to me. Obviously, I don't always come on here and just say things because my heart is pulling in that direction. That's kind of just what jumped out at me. I still think he is kind of the most credible person because he has got that he's the person people most know. I mean, what I found kind of interesting was a couple of weeks ago, almost 2 months ago, I came home, turned on the radio on a Friday night, and Andrew Pierce was talking on LBC. Now, I've always perceived him to be rather pro-Brexit, and I thought he would have been very aggro to May's deal. And he was sort of saying, oh, well, I think that Sajid Javid or Jeremy Hunt could be the next Tory leader. And I thought, that sounds out of character. Why those two? Aren't they slightly more Remain or more middle of the road? And also, I mean, Jeremy Hunt, he's got like credibility of a bunny rabbit. He's not really a strong leader that we need right now. So I was kind of confused that Andrew Pierce's sudden change. He's also been very pro May's deal. And that probably reflects the fact that the Daily Mail have had a change in editor. It's not Paul Dacre anymore. It's someone from the Financial Mail. He's far more pro-Remain, and the whole tone of the Daily Mail has totally changed. So we've lost one of the main papers that were behind the strong Brexit. They're really pushing for probably a very, very soft, non-existent Brexit. And yeah, I mean, obviously what we've got now, it's being a vassal state. It's not Brexit at all. They can't make trade deals. They can't take advantage of the opportunities, but they're still really held in to all the quagmire of this whole thing. Apparently, Bismarck once said that legislators or people shouldn't know how laws are being made, just as they shouldn't know how sausages are being made. Yeah, because they'd freak out. And I think that it typifies how the EU work. It's so highly secretive. Something else that's dawned on me throughout this whole thing, I really don't think the majority of the MPs or the journalists or the MEPs actually understand the EU or EU law or fully our constitution. Because as many times as you listen to them talking about it on the radio, they've always got a different opinion, a different take on it. They're always coming up with something new you never heard before, and none of them seem to agree with each other. Like there's Jeremy Corbyn is on YouTube, and he's talking about how the EU are ripping up the social charter. They are getting rid of workers' rights. They're using Luxembourg as a tax haven, and they're negotiating trade deals in top secret. That was like TITA. And yet I heard a Labour Party member the other day saying the exact opposite. The reason we need to stay in the EU is to protect workers' rights and the social charter. They can't seem to agree on anything about this, which leads me to think that we are being told a pack of absolute lies, and there's a huge amount of disinformation being thrown into the whole thing to confuse us. What's more, you get people phoning at the radio saying things like, well, I voted Leave and I'm really sorry I did. Now I'm going to be very pro-Remain. And I think to myself, hi, thanks for joining in. And I think these are put up calls because you can tell from the location they're phoning from, the age demographic, and the whole tone of voice. They would never leave. They would most probably always Remain. And they're phoning in as a kind of put up call, a bot call, if you like, to try and sow a seed in people's mind that, Leave wasn't a really good idea. But, you've got to stick with these things and see it through. I'd never think it was going to be easy. I don't think anything worthwhile is easy. You've got to work through it. It kind of amuses me when Teresa May says, this is the best deal that we could have had. Because I'm thinking, well, for example, I've got a friend and she was doing the Ironman. And for her first Ironman, and she's not a professional athlete, and she swam for 2.5 hours, rode a bike for 6.25, whatever, long time anyway, hours. And then she ran for over 4 hours. Now, I would have never believed that was humanly possible for anyone, a man or even a professional athlete, yet she did it. So therefore, Teresa May is in the same position as I am with Ironmans when it comes to negotiation, because she ain't even got a clue what is possible. So how can she say it's the best deal? She can't say that, because maybe it's the best deal for her ability, but then I don't think her ability in negotiating is particularly good, or maybe it's just her will is lacking. Now, I believe that, yes, so just talk a little bit about the whole EU army. I think the correct term is EU Military Union rather than EU army. Apparently, they have already brought all the forces together. They are unified and they're being put under single point control. We are already immersed in that. And I'm not quite sure if we're going to be getting out of it. Now, the reason the politicians on talking about this a lot is because the Commons and the MPs aren't actually aware of it. They don't even know about the Sandhurst Treaty and also the 2010 Lancaster House Franco-UK Treaty. It didn't Parliament for approval, and they're not really totally well versed with this. Now, these treaties are being negotiated above the head of Parliament, which means we are going into this whole military thing, which involves very strong alignment with France, and of course France are the EU, without the oversight of Parliament, and it's just sneaking through with people not really being aware of it. Something quite interesting came to my attention. It was in a document, and it's called the NATO 430s plan. And what that involves is a supply chain coming across from America in case of an altercation, most notably with Russia. So it involves 30 troop battalions, 30 squads of aircraft, 30 warships, all in 30 days, plus supply. So NATO are thinking ahead to supply chains across the Atlantic in order to facilitate some sort of military confrontation. I'll be talking a lot more about that when I do the chart for Germany, because there is something that I've seen on the chart for Germany that's really quite ominous in that vein, and all this talk of military. And I mean, Macron, he's acting like a second Napoleon. What does he think this is? There's a lot of talk. They're really upping the ante, plus, of course, Russian hacking, all the stories, and that it seems to be building up a lot of tension with Russia. So I'll be coming to talk a lot about that in future. So yes, so I think that's mainly all the things that I talked about. Just to end on something, I do find it a little bit rich, because our MPs and our industry, they're so terrified of a no deal. And yet, have you noticed over the years how easy they slap sanctions on other countries? Sometimes for a very small reason, they'll slap sanctions on. They don't care about the impact of people on those sanctions, or businesses or whatever, of innocent people in those other countries. They don't petrify themselves. They've become so stagnant, so uncreative in their thinking, and so addicted to the status quo of this corporate fascist state of the EU. They can't even think outside the box. Just to say, because I grew up in South Africa, I know that sanctions can sometimes have like a positive effect, because they increase ingenuity, they increase creativity, innovation. A country has to become more self-reliant in order to combat the effect of sanctions, and therefore it kind of strengthens the country in many ways. So while you can't really necessarily compare a no deal to sanctions, I would draw that comparison in saying that a time like that can bring out the best of the country and can increase a country's all-round ability, rather and diversity within industry in a country, rather than becoming totally sort of single-minded and focusing on things because it's so easy to either import or trade. So I think it could be a very good thing. I think it could create a huge amount of jobs and reinvigorate enterprise and a pioneering attitude. That is the way I would like to look at it, and it's not a way a lot of people look at it, because it's a threat to the establishment, and I mean the corporate establishment, and also the kind of financial establishment. It's a threat to them. They don't want competition. They don't want to think out the box and think differently. Yeah, they do want a war. They do, because it's the one way of quashing nationalism and quashing the populist uprising and getting control. It's a way of shaking the chessboard around, isn't it? And rearranging the chess pieces exactly how they would like it after a war. They also need to get rid of Russia as a power, because, obviously, a lot of the Visegrad countries, even Austria, are looking to Russia for a little bit of strength and support away from the EU. So they really need to get rid of that. I think Europe is being destroyed. They're wanting to remake it in their own image in a different way. Yeah, that's true. Have you time to do a quick recap of the chart? I missed the run through. Lynn, I didn't do a major thing on Theresa May or the UK's chart for this, because I've looked at them both extensively before, but the main sort of point was that Theresa May has this almost exact Saturn square sun, which indicates defeat of her plans, which indicates great obstacles, which indicates rejection of the course she's chosen, and that she should be put back to the drawing board. I've also indicated that she's having Neptune conjunct Mars, which also indicates a defeat, especially where you're looking for support amongst your peers and against your fellow professionals and that. So she's feeling very deflated, very tired after it, very defeated, and yet there's still kind of a bulldog in her that wants to carry on because she has authority from somewhere. So that's what I was saying there, Lynn. And Lynn, I also pointed out that this is the last time Pluto will oppose the moon this month. It's just finished its final passage past the moon, which means a certain sense of completion. And from that, I didn't think we'd be going back to square one with a new referendum and going back to old ground, going back in. It seems to indicate to me that this is the last gasp. It's got to be this. It's probably going to be no deal, and it's the end of Theresa May. But when I indicated that Uranus was squaring Jupiter in the 10th house of the UK, I was indicating there can still be possible leadership challenges, changes to the Tory party leader and our prime minister, but not pretty much certain, not a general election. Poland and Hungary not happy, Italy also. Yeah, well, those countries have developed a backbone. And I think the major thing looking forward to this is our political arena is totally going to change, because the Labour Party have shown that they really are split between the Remainers, who should join, some in the Tory party. A lot of people in the Tory party who need to break off and head towards the right. And Jeremy Corbyn needs to break off and head towards the left and give people a real choice. But I don't know. I think the whole key in politics for a long time was not to have a choice. That's why they keep saying Brexit is divisive. Trump is divisive. They are not divisive. Politics, if it's working properly, should be divisive, because there should be a clear choice. Politics is only not divisive when there's a cigarette paper in between the parties and it's no real difference which one you have, which for many years was exactly the same. Because Blair, Brown, Cameron, did we notice any difference? No, we didn't. It's politics, by definition, should be divisive, because there should be a clear choice between different things. Thanks, Lynn. Yes, I think we're in for some really big shifts all over Europe, and also the solar eclipse that is happening in Capricorn in the UK's fourth house also indicates the growing nationalism. Now, I don't obviously see nationalism as a bad thing. I think it goes with conservatism, with the whole thing of having a smaller government, not like another massive layer of government called the EU. Look, we don't trust politicians. Why do we need another massive layer of them called the EU that are unelected? Nonsense. Could also do without the House of Lords. We want elected politicians that we can keep our beady eyes on in our country, and specific laws per specific countries, so that we have laws that match the culture and also the geography of the country and the specific talents and individual nature of the country, because some countries are ideally geared towards different kind of things, and our laws should take note of it. And countries also allow us to vote with our feet, because if we don't like what's going on, you can move to another country. Well, Belgium split. I have no idea on that. Haven't had a look at Belgium. I don't know much about Belgium at the moment, but I'll have a think about it. China has amazing amounts of gold bullion. Yes, they've been stockpiling. They're even encouraging their citizens to buy more silver and gold, because they recognize that the money system might collapse. But a lot of people say China are not doing as well as they say. They've got an awful lot of debt among the public sector, the private sector debt. So it's not all so great in China. I must have a look at their chart. I haven't ever looked at it before, but as I say, Germany is coming up, Saudi Arabia is coming up. I may look at Spain and a few. As far as France goes, I did extensively do France last year with Marine Le Pen, because I know someone asked about that. And I thought last year was Marine's best chance, and it was her best performance. Her chart was extremely positive. I think Macron's chart painted him exactly as the globalist shill he is, and he's a puppet. I think he's got a huge amount of money behind him. He won't quit. None of those protests will make him quit. And I think France is pretty much locked into the whole EU scheme. So I don't have a lot of hope for France. I have more hope for Holland in terms of following an Italy direction. Don't have that much hope for France. And although Sweden voted a little bit more right, it's really not far enough right. I think a lot of the politicians in Sweden are kind of saying the right things, but they have no intention of doing those things, which was how every politician operated until Donald Trump. That's why they can't stand him, because he made some promises and actually acted on them. And it's like, freak people out all over. But he's trying to act on them. It's getting increasingly difficult for him. Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I hope this has been a successful vlog. If it disappears a little bit later, it means I had to edit it, because last time I pushed end stream and then it's sort of like carried on. So this time I hope when it ends, it ends. Okay, thank you everyone for joining me. And well, let's see what happens on the 11th, hey? Roll on the 11th. As far as this whole thing about will people be watching I'm a Celebrity or I'm a deadbeat has-been, please get me into the jungle so I can eat cockroaches and earn myself some money program. I don't think there's exactly a clash between that and the Brexit debate. And I don't really see the point of that debate. But we'll watch on and we'll see what happens. Take care, guys.